What's up, everybody? It's Bo here with another X-Men 97 TV Talk. And after that first season, if you're like me, you've got one thing on your mind. What's going to happen next in season 2? Now, I've already put out a theory video on how I see the missing X-Men from the finale lining up almost perfectly with the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which we can kind of see coming together early on in season 2. But given how season 1 pretty much ran through so very many stories in such a short amount of time, I'm wondering to what extent are we going to see a season-long arc for Apocalypse, or is that really just kind of setting up the first half, or maybe even just the first episode of season 2? One way or the other, I think it's safe to say we'll have a lot of different things they'll explore in season 2 beyond just Apocalypse. There are a few different threads that I see out there dangling that they left for all of us as the fans and theorists to begin to tie up in ways that we see them coming together. Namely, there were a lot of references to the Phoenix in the opening credits for this entire season. And with Jean making brief contact with the Phoenix Force at the finale, I mean, you gotta wonder, are we starting to see some sort of reconnection between Jean and the Phoenix? Was this moment, in effect, a way in which the Phoenix is being notified that it's time to come back to Earth to be able to come and pursue Jean for some reason? Obviously, she's in a lot of distress with everything that's happened this past season, and this unintentional calling of the Phoenix Force to come back into Jean, I think, would be very interesting, especially because we got a lot of setup in this season for an Avengers versus X-Men. Now, I've been talking about this throughout this season, but with Captain America coming in and playing a pretty significant cameo role, and a lot of different characters either being seen or alluded to throughout the season, and with the season finale featuring basically an entire panel of Avengers vs. X-Men in the midst. I mean, the writing is on the wall. Avengers vs. X-Men in X-Men 97, that's happening. Now, whether it happens in season 2 or if it's a setup for season 3, that I don't know. But I do know that all the pieces are there. All the tea leaves are pointing in the direction of an Avengers vs. X-Men. Which leads to the question, what will it ultimately be that puts these two teams in direct conflict with each other? If I'm correct, and the Phoenix Force is coming back to Earth, that would align very much with the plotline of Avengers vs. X-Men. The circumstances may not line up perfectly, but at the same time, they could throughout season 2 set things up that puts us in a position where we have essentially a Krakoa-esque new Genosha being established, and a reason for which the X-Men are facing some kind of post-apocalyptic extinction. One in which the Phoenix Force coming back could be the answer to all of their prayers. And with this cosmic, godlike entity coming to Earth, that's going to be something that's going to alarm a lot of the governments of the world, and thus another call to the Avengers may be required. Now, Steve and Tony, seen here telling the US president that some of their best friends are mutants, totally stood by in the season finale as the United States launched a nuke directly at the X-Men. Literally, they did nothing. And with the back and forth that we saw between Rogue and Captain America earlier on in the season, you can see that the tensions are kinda high. The X-Men are not necessarily seen as equals even in the superhero community. I need to go back and rewatch the crossover episode between The Amazing Spider-Man and X-Men from that series. But I even feel like some of Spidey's prejudices were coming out where maybe, he was worried that people would perceive him as a mutant when that's not necessarily the case. I could be mixing up some elements of the comics in there. I don't know. It's been a while. But regardless of what's come before back in the original series, we definitely see all the cookie crumbs are here in this 97 series that sets it up. And I, for one, am absolutely here for it. I want to see these characters go toe-to-toe. Rogue versus the Hulk, or maybe even Captain Marvel, given their actual history in this series, would be very interesting. Storm versus Thor, Cap versus Cyclops, Tony versus Forge. There's just a lot of different things that we could see in a full-on Avengers versus X-Men. And I guess now that I'm even saying all this, I don't want it to happen in season 2. I want it to be season 3 because I want them to have plenty of time for some epic battle sequences. I remember when that story came out in the comics and there was kind of a little bit of a disconnect in that there was being presented this almost pseudo-cinematic experience that was going on in the panels of the comic book pages. And yet I feel like the medium was limiting, given the fact that, especially right now with what we're seeing in some of the battles from season 1, I mean, goodness gracious, could you imagine what it would be like for these two teams to go up against each other and really give some of these one-on-one battles really full-on episodes, or at least half episodes, to really give them room to breathe? I just think it'd be outstanding. So what do you think? Am I way off? Are we going to get an X-Men versus Avengers next season? Could that be more of a season 3? What are some of the one-on-one fights that you'd like to see go down as part of an Avengers versus X-Men? What do you think will be the catalyst? Will it be the Phoenix? Could it be something else? Put it in the comments. Let's talk about it.